surfaces. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects. For more information, visit kingcounty.gov.
Do you have an idea for a community project in your neighborhood? You could be eligible for up to $50,000 in funding through the City of Seattle's Neighborhood Matching Fund. Grants are awarded to grassroots projects that build stronger communities, with an emphasis on projects led by impacting Black, Indigenous, and people of color BIPOC communities. To learn more about the Neighborhood Matching Fund or to see if your project meets the criteria, visit seattle.gov/neighborhoods/NMF.
Atlantic Street Center has been serving the children, youth, and families of the Seattle-King County area since 1910. We partner with families and communities to raise healthy, successful children and youth through services including counseling, early learning, youth development, domestic violence, and education support for school-aged children. Committed to serving the African-American community, Atlantic Street Center provides services and support for all marginalized people. Learn more at AtlanticStreetCenter.org.
And welcome to our live studio audience for another exciting edition of Did You Know? And here we go with round one. Did You Know?
COVID vaccine is free and easy to get. You don't need insurance or an appointment to get your vaccine. Vaccines are available at many locations near you.
And now we're going to double the value. Did You Know?
The COVID-19 vaccine is always free of cost. You can visit pharmacies, community health centers, and other health providers in your neighborhood.
And now for the lightning round. Did You Know?
The Delta variant of COVID is a mutation that has health experts worried because it's twice as contagious.
Then for our finale. Did You Know?
The best way to protect yourself from the COVID Delta variant is to get fully vaccinated. Get your vaccine today.
Find out more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine. Did You Know?
Rainier Avenue Radio. I haven't seen leadership team.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Juan Cotto touching bases with you live from your community radio station, our community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. You all know this man here. He has been across the state, crisscrossing from track and field events, baseball events, soccer events, golf events, all of the fun of the winter, the conclusion of the spring sports championships in the state of Washington, putting mile after mile after mile on his Ford exhibition. It's called the Ford Explorer. The Ford Explorer. I've got to tell this story, Mick. About a month and a half ago, I rented a Ford Edge, and the guy upgraded me from a compact car to a Ford Edge, and I said to myself, that's going to really blow my reputation. People see me drive around the Rainier Valley in a Ford Edge. Let me tell you something. When I got done with the week of the Ford Edge, I'm convinced that that's the greatest American sedan ever made. It was unbelievable. I mean, the pickup, and I'm sorry to be doing a Ford commercial, but the Ford Edge was an awesome vehicle. Sorry, Tony. You need to get Ford to get some advertising here. But welcome back, Mick Hoffman, from his trip around the state and seeing all the events. And congratulations to all of our spring sport athletes. Congratulations to all of our spring sport coaches. Congratulations to all of our spring sport parents and all those who make these events so special. Mick Hoffman, the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. Tell us a little bit about your week.
Yeah, it was a great week. We started Tuesday with golf. It was a little cold and wet on this side of the state, but did that Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday we had some track and fast pitch, and over the weekend we had tennis and more baseball, fast pitch. We had a no-hitter thrown in a semifinal game. We had a walk-off home run in a semifinal fast pitch game over in Tri-Cities. We had lots of state records broken at both big school, small school track meets. So yeah, it was it's a lot of fun. You go through all the grind of the business side of this, but spend 4 days out on the road just watching kids compete and having fun and making memories. We added a unified 4x relay. So with a project we have with Special Olympics of Washington, so students are cognitively challenged. You have 2 athletes, which are our Special Olympians, and then 2 partners, which are our generic kids. And they do a 4x100 relay. It was so well received. We had ambulatory in it, so it was really open to everybody. And it was phenomenal. It was really, really cool to watch the just to be like, instead of having these outlying groups, to bring them into a single event. So Justin Kesterson and Mandy with Special Olympics have done, and Morgan have done really, really good work, being very thoughtful and intentional and inclusive in a way that enhances the event and experience for more kids. So we're hearing in schools, like, there's heavy competition to be the partner on those teams. Like, they want to support that, to compete in that event and run at a state meet. So it was our first year with it. It went really well.
You and I have had several conversations, and just before you listen, people are calling me right now. I have to call you back, whoever you are. You and I have had conversations. This isn't gotcha. This is never going to be a gotcha type of broadcast. This is about promoting sports in the state of Washington, and we certainly will touch on difficult topics or topics that are in the news. And certainly, as I was telling before, just before we came on the air, at Franklin High School back in 2014, I had a transgender athlete who participated in the sport of football. And much to my amazement, I called a meeting of our seniors and leaders on the team together, and they were like, "Coach, it's not a big deal to us, and we have transgender folks in our families. We've grown up in this. It's not a big deal. Don't even need to have a meeting about it." And our kids, I thought, handle it unbelievably, and in many ways handle it far better than sometimes our adults do. We had a state champion who was transgender this weekend, and Mick, this isn't a got you, and if you feel uncomfortable, let's. All I want to know is tell us what your thoughts are and how the WIAA makes its rulings on who participates in the races, and we're going to choose to celebrate the accomplishment. And I'm sure that you're going to probably hear from people throughout the community who may disagree with that.
Yeah, no, we're hearing from them right now. So it's a very fair question. I mean, it's a real question. It's impacting students, regardless of your personal opinion. And so I think the first thing people need to understand is that our policy allows students to compete in the gender identity of what they identify as. And so that aligns with state law. It also aligns with federal guidance. So the current administration just asked the Department of Education to review this. So a few years ago, they reviewed allowing people who are born as one sex to compete and identify as another. And it was deemed not to be a Title IX violation. They just finished that review. It took well over a year, and they've come back with a similar finding. And so federal guidance says allow them to compete how they identify. State law says they get to compete how they identify. And because of that, OSPI, which oversees public education, came out with guidance that says that kids get to compete as they identify. So, we understand that people have different opinions on this. And so the question I ask people is, like, I get it. Like, I understand why you have your opinion. That's great. But what laws, other than maybe speeding, do people knowingly violate state laws? Like, it's a violation. That you're creating exposure for yourself personally, for your association or your work group or whoever you're with. Like, what rules do you violate? We're not going to do that. Our attorneys have said you can't, don't do that. So our rule is you get to compete how you identify, right? And so some people support that. Some people are opposed to it. What a lot of people don't realize in Washington, this is the 18th year we've had this rule like this. This isn't new. Wow. This isn't new in the last 3 years. This isn't new in the last 2 years with all the other politicizing of this topic. Washington has done this for 18 years. And so we very well could have had other transgender athletes on state championship teams and have been unaware of it. We don't ask them to identify and register any differently than any other student. So I have the opportunity to discuss this with a lot of people, and I have a lot of people who fully support it, of a lot of people who fully are opposed to it, thinking it's unfair advantage. So, we're right in the middle of it, and our mission is to support all students, and that can be, that's being thrown at us right now in both sides. We get it. And so the default is follow the law, follow federal guidance, and follow OSPI directives. And that's where we sit.
The discussion about this, and it has gone on for quite some time now, and we've seen it on a variety of different levels. And at Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center, the late, great Dr. Beverly Torok Storr, who really taught me so much when I worked with her on so many different issues in science. And she said something that I thought was so interesting to a group of students from Highline High School that we had there listening about cancer research and funding for cancer research. And she said that just because you think you're right, someone who has a dissenting opinion from you, they are not wrong. And I thought that was really interesting. And this is an issue, and I think about the issues that you have to deal with and that we wrestle with as society. Just because I may believe one area of that issue is right, that doesn't mean that the other side is wrong. How difficult an issue is this to deal with, or do you wrestle in the fact that we've got it somewhat solved by the way the policies are laid out from the federal side and also from the state side?
Yeah, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to this. I had a really good discussion last week with a media person who I've worked with for over 20 years, and he is absolutely positively one of the greatest supporters of high school sports. And he shared with me, because he was getting ready to do his podcast on transgender athletes. And he shared with me in the course of that conversation that his daughter has transitioned, was born as Evan, a young male growing up, and made a transition to Luna. And how fascinating the psychology and just the family dynamics and all the things they've done. And, he shared with, how he was skeptical before and now living it and being educated on it. So he knows more than I do, right? He's actually going through the process with somebody he loves. And, but he did share his opinion is he still thinks there's a competition issue there. Even though he loves his daughter. And so, a lot of people just can't wrap their minds around that. He's living it. I have a ton of respect for him. So at the same time, we have a lot of transgender athletes who compete that are, don't place, don't win, aren't major contributors. They're just participating like most of our students. The flip side, I asked the question, what happens if we have, we had a young lady playing volleyball this year, 6'2", hit the ball hard. Like, I would not want to be anywhere on the court with her pounding. She's a D1 athlete. I mean, the difference in her ability and the people she's competing. So how do you measure that, right? We don't have an answer. No one has an answer for that yet, other than to say, make these black and white policies, which, if it's state law, you have to follow. And so we're following it. So I think it's going to be really interesting over the next few years how that happens. And if we start seeing individuals who truly don't identify that way, but do it just because they can, and how that will skew competition. Because what we have experienced are young people who make that transition. They actually start formal process in that transition, and you can see a change in their performance. And so that's real. We've witnessed that. Now, does that level it out? I don't know. We've definitely seen a change where people aren't talking about that particular young person anymore. So it's a very emotional, very challenging question. And I will just tell you, being in the middle of it, our attorneys, the advice they give is let us have state law on our side. So that's where we sit. Fully understand both sides of this argument.
Mick, and just in terms of leadership, and we've talked about that so much, leadership as the head of the WIAA, or if you are the director of government affairs at a blood research center, or if you're managing your business, if you are managing your nonprofit, I personally believe, and I know, knowing you, it is best to deal with these types of situations upfront and head on, and because if you don't, they tend to fester. And then that's really where, and I can understand it, because I can understand leadership in the role and trying to make everybody happy in a situation where you're not going to make everybody happy. However, I just want to get your sense of dealing with the parents who are from the or people who oppose this for whatever reason or support it. You know, how do you, as a leader, come up with a sense of balance for all of this?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to tell anybody they're right or wrong, because we don't know if there's a right or wrong answer exactly on this topic, right? There's different parts of it that are more right than wrong, and others are more wrong than right. So we've taken the stance of just letting people know the why and the what, right? This is why this is happening. This is what can be done if a majority of people want it changed. And in the interim, we're going to take care of all of our kids. So the kids, I mean, we had young people being put on social media with millions of people viewing their picture and making comments about them. And after my conversation last week, it's even more heartbreaking to hear that, to hear how these young people are going through this. Like, people don't understand. I can't understand that. It's not my place to decide whether that's right or wrong. My personal opinion means zero in this. It's really more the will of the people. And at the end of the day, I mean, Juan, you're about as big a supporter as anyone of high school sports. If we gave you a list of the last 2 years of every state championship event, I would guess you would be less than 20% of naming the champions. I don't even know who won all our own state champions this weekend, right? There's so many going on, and that, like, off the top of my head, I'd have to go back and double check who won the 2B softball tournament. And so, you know, I understand people compete and they want to do that and they want to try to tie it to scholarships. I mean, one event's not going to cost somebody a scholarship. So I get it. And so what do? We're getting some very angry emails. We're getting some very inquisitive emails. We're getting a few very supportive emails. You know, most people who speak up are frustrated. And so we are responding back to all of those with a lot of detail and information so people understand the why of it. We're not blaming lawmakers. We're not blaming any individual. We're not saying anybody's wrong for what or how they're saying anything, no matter how upset they are. We're just telling people, like, here's the facts. This is it. And it's not our place to change that. And then we'll continue looking at and observing how other entities, it's not just a Washington struggle. Oregon had a young person finish second in one of their events this week. Connecticut had state champions. And so all those, we follow those court cases and see what's going on to see if there's a change in federal guidance in that. So, in the meantime, being in the middle, like, are you supporting the transgender athlete identifying and being able to compete how she identifies, and not supporting the biological student because that's how she chooses to identify and continue to be? It's tough.
It's human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the right side or wrong side. We are all human, and this is a real test of human existence and human conversation. And hopefully these conversations will be productive, and as we go forward in the future. And I want to thank you very much for your, as always, forthright answer on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, WIAA Primetime, the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, just getting done with the spring championships. Big event tomorrow on your community radio station. The Chinatown International District Light Rail Town Hall and panel live tomorrow at 6 o'clock. That's 6 p.m. happening at the Columbia City Theater. That will be right here. And as I say before, we touch on so many events, and certainly community projects such as this. This is one that you need to be involved in, because it really is going to impact us in so many different ways, and light rail certainly has opened up access here in the southeast area of Seattle, and I have utilized light rail so much since its inception, and certainly I put my bike on that train, and I can ride all the way out to Federal Way in about an hour and a half, utilizing the red line all the way out there. This is the G red line. Takes me all the way up and see my mom in Federal Way. My mom was shocked. She said, "You ride your bike out here? That's almost 30 miles. I said, "Mom, almost 24 of them, I was on the train." So it's really impressive how this has opened up this area to all of us. And there are some major ramifications and implications. If I'm making up words now, Daniel, I'm sorry. Implications. So please come to 4916 Rainier Avenue South here at the Columbia City Theater, the historic Columbia City Theater, so you can listen to the conversation, and also so you can give your opinion, because I believe it's going to be important. And then Make Music Day. Let's go out. Let's jump out 21 days or so, a little bit more than a month, a little bit less than a month from now. Make Music Day is next month. That's June 21st. Live performances, which are going to be on Rainier Avenue Radio all day long. So if you like live music, if you love the ability and the performers that we have in our community, you're going to have an opportunity to hear them. And there's some real talent, and obviously music makes the world so much better, and it makes the world go round. That'll be June 21st on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Mick, we are, for all intents and purposes, let's call it 2.5, 3 years out of the pandemic. And we're going to talk about the impacts of COVID-19, what we've learned from COVID-19. As you and I usually do, we will probably talk about some other subjects as well. But COVID-19, the pandemic, it'd be an understatement to say that it significantly disrupted high school athletics. Can you discuss with us the effects of the pandemic on sports programs when it first began? If you can take us back to late 2020, I should say early 2020 to late 2020.
Yeah, I think it was March 13th when we got shut down. Yeah, I mean, it was a big unknown. Is this a temporary? What are we going to do? We had state dance and drill coming up in a week, and we were in the middle of spring sports, and things were going really well. People were having a good time, and all of a sudden we had no idea what was going to happen. And so just trying to understand what the heck this COVID thing was. It was really interesting. The Department of Health, through state basketball that year, my routine was like a 5:30 in the morning call with the contact, find out if we could play each day and finish our tournament. And we were getting information like, if somebody coughs, it's on there for like an hour. Oh, it's on there for 2 hours. Then all of a sudden, within a week, we're all locked down with no idea. And I remember going out for a walk with my wife, talking to my brother, saying, even if they just say we got to do this for a month, we don't have to worry about it again. I could handle that. And heck, we ended up, 16, 18 months, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think at first it was unknown. It was just shock. Like, is this really happening? This is a movie. And then we immediately went to, what do we do? Like, what can we provide our students? And trying to communicate with schools. And again, all these people with all these opinions, right? It's great when people, I really appreciate when I get an email, people are asking why. I like to understand. And they don't have to agree, right? But just to fill up email with a, Facebook cut and paste thing does no good. So we started getting a lot of that, and we didn't have a lot of answers for people. We needed to find out. So I think, and then it was just turned to real sadness knowing that we had seniors. In a lot of cases, maybe that's the first time they made their varsity team, or maybe team had put in a few years. Excuse me, had put in a few years to prepare for that point, and all of a sudden their tournament's over. One of our longtime ADs, his daughters worked their whole life preparing for state dance. They missed their junior and senior year of state dance. I mean, you think about that. And now we got people mad because they qualify in 2 sports, and we won't move, a tennis tournament for them. And, we had young people who for 2 years didn't get to compete in anything. So I think we've lost a lot of our perspective of, gratitude in what we have. Long-term consequences, we didn't have spring championships for 2 years. We lost a lot of umpires. That is the one sport we have not recovered from yet, is umpires. And so we're building back in most sports. Baseball, fast pitch are building up, but it's still a struggle at times.
The schools and the athletic departments adapted to the sudden suspension of sports, and just listening to you, goodness, I just can't remember. I can't believe it's been 4 years already.
Yeah,
it just seemed time is a blink of an eye, and it just seemed like many times it seemed like it was just yesterday, and many times it seems like that was almost 40 years.
I had almost no gray hair when I started. Somebody sent me a picture. I'm like, oh yeah, it's been. That's right. Yeah.
It was
hard to believe.
It was such a sudden change to all of us, and
think about this: if we had somebody walk in right now and said, "You're not going to play for 18 months because of a contagious disease," we would say, "No way! Like, get out of here! There's no way that's happening."
You think we were joking?
And we did it,
and that goes on. Tell us about that challenge of the remote training that athletes had to do, or let's put it this way: how were you able to work with athletes to prepare when there was really nothing really to prepare for? You had no answers. Yet, I'm sure that kids and coaches were thinking, we've got to prepare in case something gets lifted.
Yeah, I think there's always something positive in everything, right? You can find it, and I'm not a Pollyanna, I try to be, but that's just not my nature. I'm a crisis manager by trade. So I'm usually assuming the worst, planning for the best. And our coaches and athletic leaders did amazing work learning technology. When you think about how many of us use Zoom before that, right? And apps on phones. And so they found a way to stay connected to their kids. And, we've talked about this a lot. The beauty of this is these relationships. I'm driving from Yakima, I'm going to Tri-Cities. I stop at a little Circle K to grab a thing of water. And I have my WIAA t-shirt on, and this lady, I'm guessing around 40 years old, for 10 minutes tells me about her coach and the impact he had on her when she was 15 years old. And she's, dang near bawling, telling me the story about how wonderful it was. Our coaches didn't just punt there. They went out and found a way to stay connected. So they were doing virtual team meetings. A lot of them did character and culture building, which they normally don't have. They feel like they don't have time with during the season. They created workouts. They recorded workouts. It started off really with cell phone stuff and sent it as text messages. And as they learned technology and got access to it, and so, our coaches hit it out of the park, and our ADs of finding ways to stay connected and check in on kids, especially the most vulnerable ones that they were aware of, but really checking in on all of them, because all of our adults who work with kids know any kid, no matter how well they present, that you never know what's going on underneath. So yeah, they did amazing work in that with the technology.
What measures were implemented to ensure the safety of student athletes, coaches? And you mentioned with the technology, but were there ways that we could make sure that the kids were allowed to resume in a safe environment? Did we have masking? I mean, what types of things did the WIAA agree upon to get kids back out on the field when they were able to?
Yeah, we did a lot of negotiating with the Department of Health. Masking was required. Kids out there running with masks on. Mm-hmm. We had spacing initially. They couldn't be within 6 feet. So we actually had coaches go out like on tennis courts or outdoor areas and chalk off 10 or 6 feet. So kids could do their ball handling drills or dribbling drills one-on-one or one-on-none and keep that buffer zone. So we had a lot of that. Then testing came in place when the Department of Health wanted us to test. So our athletic directors and other people in schools became testing professionals and daily with that. And so, we were going to do whatever it took to get kids playing again. And, that's where it was, let them play. We'll do anything to let them play. Man, I'm waiting to hear that again.
It is through great challenge that you learn, whether it's through technology, whether it's creating different types of practices, whether it is creating new ways of doing things. And certainly the pandemic forced all of us in many different paradigms to make shifts and to participate not only in athletics, but I think we've seen many different changes throughout our culture and throughout our society because of what occurred in 2020. When we come back, we'll talk about one of the most important topics that I think has changed since then, and that is about mental health. And we're going to be talking about that on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Rainier Avenue Radio. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Generational wealth. Generational wealth. Generational wealth. What is generational wealth? We asked our communities, and this is what they had to
You
say.
see lots of people who've gotten rich quickly and gotten poor just as quickly and left nothing to their families and or the community. That's a big chunk of the piece that needs to change. We need to see people making their investment in their families and in themselves and in the community. We want to build all three of those elements. We want to establish long-lasting family and community wealth, not just people who've gotten rich and squandered it. Those who have wealth will be opposed to our breaking the status quo. So this will be a struggle. All those folks are used to how things have been for hundreds of years, and that's the piece that needs to change. And they need to be able to stand by.
This campaign to create awareness to generational wealth is brought to you by the Department of Neighborhood's Generational Wealth Initiative, the Washington Housing Finance Commission, and Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Different rules apply when it gets this late, you know what I mean? It's like after hours.
Whatever gets you through the night.
Hello, I'm an unpaid spokesman for DJ Sotovaci. I'd like to invite you to listen to his free-form music show. It's popular music the way it was never intended to be heard. Whatever gets you through the night, late nights, here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Whatever gets you through the night. 1, 2, get down.
What's up, big and little homies? This is Masvita Maraire, host of Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, your one-stop shop for Seattle sports. We cover preps, we cover college, we cover pro, we cover it all. Huskies, Mariners, Seahawks, Garfield, South, Roosevelt, Petro, King County. This is where you want to listen to for all the sports that's happening in Seattle. Seattle Sports Weekly on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Love food? Here's some storage tips to keep it fresh longer. Store cut fruits and vegetables in the fridge. Place in reusable containers. Keep bread in the freezer for longer storage. 40% of food in the U.S. goes uneaten. Save money, save food, save the planet. Visit Seattle Public Utilities for more tips.
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Like baseball. So it's like we're at it all summer, but yeah, they it was a good summer. Good schedule. He might walk through here. Would you like to be on the radio station? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Juan Cotto touching bases with you from 4916, the historic Columbia City Theater, 4916 Rainier Avenue South. You had a young friend of ours who participated in one of our shows last year, one of our political shows, and 2024 will undoubtedly be a year of politics in the United States, as it is one of those general election years. And let's just say that this year has a lot of interesting subplots and sub-twists at every level, starting at the federal level all the way down to the local levels. And if you love politics, there is no better place to tune in than Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We will cover it all. We will cover the two gentlemen running for president of the United States. And I'm sure that there will be a variety of different opinions from people in this beautiful Rainier Valley area that we will hear. We have state legislative races, not as contested as they have been in the past, but certainly the issues that come out of those races are always things that we get in conversations about. There's a city council race as well. And as many recall, yours truly was a candidate for the nomination, and I decided not to run for the Seattle City Council. And I just thought it was best that I didn't run in consecutive years at this ripe age that I'm at. I'm kind of like, I didn't want to run back to back, and let the younger people do that. So Tanya Wu is running to finish off the term since Teresa Mosqueda left. And she has drawn 3 very serious challengers. And I'm sure that in this citywide race, this will be something to see. Tanya is a Southeast Seattle resident, and she has got some folks who are going to be stiff competition. She's got to run all throughout the city in an at-large seat. And people don't think I'm smart. I'm brilliant. Not have to do that all summer. And then she's got to do it again next year. So she's got her work cut out for her. And I'm sure that Tony B will probably have her in at some point to discuss what she will be up to and how she plans on putting those campaigns together. So there'll be plenty of politics. Next, actually tomorrow, is it tomorrow? I believe that we will have right here at 6 o'clock, the Chinatown International District Light Rail Station Town Hall and Panel. It's going to be happening right here, excuse me, at Columbia City Theater. For those of you who are watching this outside of the city of Seattle, I want to let you know that it is November weather. My wife and I, we went to 4 select baseball games this weekend, and it was cold, and was drinking hot chocolate, hot coffee, and trying to warm myself up. And my throat is still starting to recover as it's chilly in these here parts. But we know that springtime is just around the corner. The big event tomorrow is going to be the Chinatown International District Light Rail. It's going to be tomorrow night at 6 o'clock here. Thank you, Daniel. I'm pulling the fast one on you. Be here because the information is important, and certainly this train has opened up our world here in Southeast Seattle. We hope you're going to participate in that. And then Make Music Day, we're going to get an early jump on this. This is June the 21st, June 21st, live musical performances all day long. Once again, if you love politics, if you love sport, if you love children, and if you love music, please make Rainier Avenue Radio the app so you can get it and listen, because there's some exciting shows that I know that you would love to be a part of and listen to. This is Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. We have a conversation every Tuesday, just about every Tuesday at 3 o'clock. When we are not here live, there are 2 people who look like us that do the rerun, and they're quite good too. Mick, mental health, and going back to the conversation about the pandemic, and our thoughts about the pandemic as now we are moving away from, like you said, May 13th, 2020. We're just past the 4-year mark of when it started, and the change and uncertainty. It seems like mental health finally became less stigmatized in a conversation that we can certainly have now. And I was just talking to a really good friend of mine this morning, and he went to a therapy session, and he just said, something, it is now commonplace. I can talk about this. I guess not that you couldn't have before, considering that I was a psychology graduate, and I thought going to therapy was a normal part of life, but at least the conversation is now normalized. And let's go back to the mental health of those generations, missing sporting events, missing championships, the regret, the anxiety, the pain, and the impact of the mental health. We got to see it firsthand how much sports actually means to our youth, and the fact that these events are important, and that a lot of kids missed out on something that was very, very important to them.
Yeah, I mean, University of Wisconsin did a lot of really good research during the pandemic and following up on the pandemic. So if people want to go into the details of it, I highly recommend that. You think about it, when you get stressed out, you go for a run, right? You go ride your bike, you go do something physical. It settles you. It kind of centers you. It helps clear your mind. Go for a walk, whatever that physical is. And so when people are afraid to go outside and breathe the air, right, that's going to impact us. The other piece is we know, the most dangerous place for a student statistically is at home. The safest place is at school. There's statistics that show that. And so, no, that's not all homes. And thank goodness it's very few homes, but that's the reality of it. And, so the other hard part is when people were locked down, you knew some of them were locked into very unhealthy situations. And so there's going to be, challenges with that, both mentally and physically, emotionally. And so that was another piece as an educator that you're looking at that and you're like, wow, did not think about that. And so, and then just in general, just a young student, drive-through graduations, right? Like, think about, I remember my graduation day still is a long time ago. Like, I remember that. And senior prom and the senior assembly and all those traditions, those things, those culminating events of a year. And then you flip back to those kindergartners and first graders, like where you're learning the norms of how to play school, or those young middle schoolers going into high school, like they weren't taught the way, right? From experiencing it. And so it's all new now. So it provides some opportunity, but at the same time, once everybody's back, it's hard to really get those back in place. So, we heard, there's some tragedies of young people during COVID and coming out of COVID. And, I tell our staff what we do really is important because we help eliminate some of the barriers for students in schools to provide something for them that really is impactful, more so than just wins and losses.
You bring up something so interesting because, it's you talk about memories, and for me to go back now 42 years, there's not much I do remember. And trust me, folks, I don't remember any of the scores of the games. I know we won some, and I know we lost some, but I realize I went to practice every day and I worked hard and I tried to be the best I could be, which is what sports is all about, and you ultimately learn that. But I'll tell you this, when you became 16 and 17, your junior and senior year of high school, it just seemed like Seattle opened up for me. Not only were we able to ride the bus, and I often speak about the fact that I went to a high school that's in downtown on Capitol Hill, but the city opened up. We started driving. Yeah. Our parents let us have the car, and it just seemed like it was a whole new world that was available to us. And I think about those kids, and I think about the memories that we developed and the fun that we had, and the things that we did, and the things that I'm sure that our parents didn't want us to do. And nevertheless, that was taken away from those students.
Absolutely. And like you say, you can't remember a lot of the scores. There's highlights, and we probably remember more. We probably remember a little better than the way it really happened. But that it's those emotional ties that come from competing with your friends and competing against your friends. You feel it, right? You think about your baseball team or your gymnastics meet, and you feel it because you can't really remember it. And they lost that. And the research is continuing. It's going to be really interesting over the next 10 to 20 years to see that impact of loss of competition, loss of school, formal structured activity on how people develop. Maybe we're going to find out it was better. Who knows? Maybe we're wrong. I'm going to guess we're not. And so think about the skills that you take from those years of 16, 17, 18 years old and apply as a father and as a supervisor and as a community member and all those things that you do. Some kids didn't get to experience that like we did. And I don't think that's a good thing based on the preliminary research.
The role of social media on mental health, and you discussed it in some of the things you're dealing with around the transgender issue. Sometimes social media is not the proper tool for these types of conversations. I remember the days, Mick, as I'm sure you did in your youth. We played with the kids in our neighborhood. We went down the street and you had the Gilberts, and you went up the street and you had Mark Eyrig, and you had the guys that went to the public schools, and down the street we had the Haleys, Mark and Michael, and we went down there and you would shoot hoops at their place. And there was a connection because you knew each other and you went to school with each other in a lot of cases. It just seems like today, my son, he comes home, and it's difficult for me because he will be playing with all of his buddies, and he's got 4 or 5 friends, and they're sitting there on their headsets and they're playing whatever games they're playing. And as a father, I mean, I know my dad would never let me sit in the room and play video games like that. However, that's the way they connect now.
Yeah.
And when they see each other at church on Sunday, when they see each other at events, they're all friends, and the connection is still there. But this electronic media has allowed them to do that. What do you think about the role that has played with our kids, and what are we seeing with that?
I'm guessing it was a benefit during COVID because they were able to stay directly connected with their friends in a similar manner, especially the gamers, right? Or the other people who are involved in other online events. That didn't really change. I mean, it's weird to us because that's not what we grew up in. It's totally normal to them. And now we have young adults. We have people in our office. Like my grandson plays Fortnite with one of the young ladies in our office. Like they're 3 hours away. And he came and worked at an event. They were friends. Like, so, I trust her, but I also pay attention. But how easily those connections can be made, and you don't know necessarily everybody's on the other end. So yeah, it's different. And as an older person, I guess we embrace it and we make sure it's healthy, and no different than we're out running around on the streets. I wasn't always healthy either. Some of the stuff in between, right? So
I tell my friends, at least it's safe that we know where our kids are.
Yeah.
Right? Just sit in the room, and we know he's not going to go out. And he did his 14th birthday party online, and I remember when we drove around and we would leave the root beer and candy that he loves on everybody's doors. And then at the birthday party, they would open them up and drink them and have a great time with that.
Yeah.
And we thought that was really cool.
Yeah, people got creative. And so, again, there's good that comes out of everything, no matter how horrific COVID was, that we find other ways, and we understand our kids better now because of it.
I do tease my son, however. I would love to see my father, who was Air Force trained, worked at Boeing, and I would love to see how he would think of all this. Of course, he would probably say, "Oh, that it's Clemente. Leave him alone, Juan." I had to be much harder on you, and of course, he was Clemente. Don't you even think for 1 second he wasn't. Tell us about the financial impacts of COVID-19 and the impact that had on the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. Like you said, you haven't been able to rebound from referees. How did this impact the contracts that you have? How did this impact the way that going without those state championships impacted this organization financially?
Yeah, a lot of negotiating. About 55% of our revenue comes from gate receipts. About 50% of our costs come from the events. And so it's pretty much a wash not having them for the most part, but there's other things. We have a sponsorship contract that is a big piece of our contract or our finances. We sell gear, state tournament gear that is, and we have contracts with all those groups. And not only did we have to negotiate our contracts with the venues, which they were all very good to us, we had to do it with our own partners internally. And when all of a sudden you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars, there are some hard conversations, but we came out of it okay. We're very fortunate to have, strong partners and understanding partners that everybody took a little bit of the hit. Schools had the hardest part because they were being asked to continue offering services, and they're same thing. Most extended day, most sports run off of ticket sales. There's not a lot of general fund dollars that go to that. It goes through the ASB. That's ticket sales sponsors, no different than us. And with House Bill 1660, right, designed to eliminate barriers for low-income students, they already were running a little bit, but it was backfilled with ESSER funds. The federal government made money available. They did a good job with that. And so I think schools came out of it okay as well. So we all just had to kind of balance. So the feds got the money from our taxes, or they printed it, caused a little inflation.
Right.
But either way, to try to head off some worse consequences, and everybody shared a little bit in the pain, and we got through it. But yeah, we had to do. That's really where I learned that my job really running a business. So.
Can you discuss the role of, and I guess you have, but let's go a little bit deeper, and I guess that we can discuss technology on so many different levels. Let's examine it from this standpoint. When we think about technology, what are the things that you think that we do better now than before the pandemic? I mean, and I'm going to lead this off. I remember the day I could not function a Zoom meeting. I couldn't set one up.
Yeah.
I couldn't manipulate the share screen. I couldn't manipulate getting information to people on the link and everything. Now I feel like I'm an expert at it. And you just the challenges force you to become stronger in those areas. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts in regards to what are some of the things that you believe, especially with the statewide organization, has it actually made it the ability for you not to have to travel all over the state? Have you been able to make your time more efficient?
Yeah, 100%. So, I'm still a big believer. It's good to do things in person. Like we could do this on Zoom, I suppose, right? And do it. But, the interactions between people is important. Coming down to the studio and working with our partners here at Rainier Avenue Radio is important. We've gone to a lot of remote committee meetings. So it used to be, we would pay to fly people in, have people drive in, pay for hotels, come in for a 2, 3, 4 hour work session and do it all over again, right? And people are spending a day and a half doing it for a meeting we can easily do on Zoom. So we're finding that rhythm and balance of what's a good remote meeting, what isn't. So it saves us a lot of money, makes us more efficient. We get more work done. So that's one that we've gotten a lot better at, are able to reach out beyond the state and share best practices with peers and partners from around rather than just a phone call or email. So that's been great. I think we've been able to push forward some initiatives. We've talked about the cameras on, I came from a company in England that Todd Stortle from WIAA heard about at NASO, his national meeting. We were, instead of them, trying to coordinate time to fly in and demonstrate and all that, we got on a Zoom with them. They showed it to us. We had a few meetings, worked through some details, bought into the trial, and off we go, right? So we're meeting, the hardest thing is coordinating international time differences. So they're meeting with us 11 o'clock at night, their time. Great, we can make that work. So.
Old Todd Stortall still around.
Yeah, that guy, I tell you what, that should be a topic all in itself. Him and I did not get along before I came to the office when I was out in the buildings. We agreed to give each other a fresh start. He's incredible.
He really is.
He's a creative. He's smart. And, we think we have it hard in the office. He has 120 plus independent associations that aren't accountable to anybody other than themselves. At least our people are accountable to their schools and school districts. So yeah, Todd's blown me away. He's fantastic.
He can be a little bit of a curmudgeon at times, but he is one positive curmudgeon when you get a chance to see I guess you could compare him to Yoda a little bit. He really does have a lot on the ball, but he has a way of getting it done.
Smart, and he gets things done. And what's interesting is I always tease him, I'm like, you'd rather fight than talk, but you know what? If you just talk first, save the fighting as the last resort. So no, he's been great. So I think other places where we've gotten a lot better is we are already doing electronic ticketing. So Andy Knapp in our office and Leah, they already had us set in with GoFan, and we were using it. So because of COVID, everybody went to it, right, as a contactless entryway. So we were able to help our schools really expedite it, and we already knew a good product. So that was helpful. And then the other explosion has been online streaming, right? So Tony and Daniel and you guys have done, that for a while with radio, now streaming, but formally streaming. And so we have every one of our events, state events now, we put on a stream somehow, some way. And it's become, we've got automated cameras in schools. So people from literally around the world, but family within the country can get online and watch a C Squad girls basketball game on December 5th if grandma's living in North Carolina. Like, how cool is that? That I remember one game my grandparents made it out of North Dakota to come watch me play. I'll never forget walking on the floor like, oh my gosh, they're here to watch me. They'd never seen me play basketball in my life. And here they are at my high school game, like how much that meant to me as a kid. And now they could watch every game if they wanted to, or they could at least say they did and lie to me and tell me that they watched it, right? But to be supportive. And so when you talk about mental health, we need to expand that bubble around our kids and love and support and that. So we developed some tools out of that. I think the technology exponentially became better because of the competition for it. So
we have a young man in Leschi, Levi, who goes to O'Day High School, and unfortunately I could not go to Tacoma to watch the basketball games in the state tournament, but I had him on the screen. And let me tell you something, I saw Levi play, and he played a tremendous defensive game, locked down the top scorer on one of the teams, and they got to make it to the second day of the tournament. And I remember the next day I was in the Starbucks in Leschi, and his mom walked in. And I said, hey, boy, your son played a phenomenal game yesterday. And it was one of those things where normally I wouldn't have even had it on.
Yeah.
There's no way to see it.
Yeah.
But to be able to see it in crystal clear streaming, I mean, the streaming is so good, the broadcast was so good, and to see him play so well and what that meant to her. I mean, it is really, really cool how we're able to do that. And people said that, losing the contract with Root Sports, what's going to happen. But you've been able to turn that into a very, very positive thing.
Yeah. One, it become a revenue source, number one. Right. But number two is those are all students doing that work. That was all students. The adults were there just supervising students. The students they run the cameras. They were the director. They were running the replays. We had adults on the mic, which we're now working on a training program. We'll have a student as the third part of the broadcast team next year. So I mean, those are all things again that we pushed at a much faster pace out of necessity of COVID.
First of all, I want to say this man right here is a gem, and I know that he and I fight over who gets the bigger paycheck. And I think when we go to Ezel's Chicken, we'll be able to take some of that paycheck from our other roles, and that will be the payment for this. But we really appreciate Mick Hoffman coming down here to Rainier Avenue Radio, and I also want to thank Tony B, who's given me an opportunity to create to cultivate a broadcast career. And as Mick said, the ability to be able to utilize these avenues, Rainier Avenue Radio, these avenues to extend the work that the WIAA does and our coaches and teachers do has just been a tremendous thing. Can you tell us, and I remember this going back to when I was helping Coach Sampson, Coach Corey Sampson, the head football coach of the Rainier Beach Vikings in 2021, a number of his coaches couldn't come to workouts just because they were situated now in the spring. And he asked me if I could come and help out the program. I know that we had, we sprayed down our footballs. We put masks on the kids. Is there anything that came out of that? And I think we certainly have touched on some of this, but did we learn a lot about the prevention of injury and the protection of our kids in these different sports through that whole process?
I think people are more aware of just hygiene in general. From that, it became more of a norm to wash your hands all the time. And some of those simple things. Also, just being cautious of your spacing. If you can create a little space indoor, great. If not, the biggest one that we did is because we were having a different level of competition, we adjusted the pre-practice required rules down to 5 because they weren't going out and doing competition like we typically did. And because of that and the success of that, our Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, made up of medical professionals, supported an amendment this year to make that number permanently at 7 for most sports. And so most sports have reduced that. So because we realize that, we can accomplish the same goals of student safety by doing differently. So, we rely on medical professionals. They learned a whole lot about it. I think, as far as physical health and safety, not a ton other than prevention of injuries, stretching, some of the things that people did. They learned kids could keep their talent level up, doing practice a little differently. Not as much contact even in, sports like soccer and basketball, and not as much drilling as like we did and used to in wrestling. So I think everybody's adjusted a little bit.
This will be our last question, and I just want to get from your perspective. Obviously, this changed how the high schools operate. This changed how the students operate. Changed how schools operate. It changes how the WIAA has to function and operate, and then build those important connections to provide this opportunity for our children. But as you look back on it, and we're moving away from the pandemic, would you describe just simply, how we've been able to make lemons and turn it into lemonade, and utilize how this has really improved sports for our students that participate in it, as opposed to, for example, the idea of just going ahead and participating in select sports, which kind of ran amok during that whole period.
Yeah.
The importance of having a structure and having an entity like the WIAA overseeing this for our students and tying it to our education.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I'm glad you asked the question, because there were some clubs that were out there jumping fences or finding gyms and doing that and competing, right? And now what we know about COVID, okay. But the competitions weren't the same, right? They were playing for themselves. They weren't playing for their community, their school, and they didn't have those long histories with the kids in their neighborhood that they play with. And that's one of the things that we struggle with, is we want to give kids lots of choice. We want to be able to go to schools where they want to go to school, but at the same time, the portal that's happening in college, where you just have mercenaries coming in and out, and you have a new 9 guys, suiting up every night for look what's going to happen at University of Washington football and basketball. I think during COVID, we found the value of having that community through your athletics and activities. And if nothing else, it made it glaringly obvious that students need it and want it.
He is Mick Hoffman. He's the executive director of the WIAA. You can learn more about him going to the WIAA.org website and learn more about this .com website and learn more about this organization. Juan Cotto touching bases with you, and we will see you on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world.